Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Make the Most of Your College Experience series. This is our first session, the admission and application process. My name is Kelly Blount, and I'm the Program Marketing Specialist here at General Electric Credit Union, and we wanted to thank you for joining us and taking time tonight to be here for the presentation. We're excited to serve the families of individuals of our communities through this 5-session series. This series will help you learn a little more about the college process and what to expect directly from professional career and collegiate experts at Xavier University. Today's session, the admissions and application process, is led by Mike Garcia, Assistant Director of Xavier University's Office of Admissions. I wanted to make note, our second session will be the financial aid and scholarships in January, so please hold related questions until the next session. Mike, thank you for being with us today and sharing your insight and wisdom. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Mike Garcia.
Thank you so much. First, thank you all so much for tuning in. We're happy to have you. I love talking about this topic. This is what I do. As an admissions representative, one of my jobs is not just to read college applications, it's also to work with students and to work with parents and to answer questions. So this is really something that I love to do. The whole college admissions process, when we're talking about it, when you really think about it, has gotten downright scary in so many different ways, right? When I was in school and I was looking for college, and I think many of you might be able to relate as well, there wasn't as much that went into it. I think my guidance counselor actually picked the 3 schools I was going to apply to, and then I went to one of them. But there is so much more that goes into this now. So this is really to help you understand the process of college admissions, the application process, but also to demystify it a bit. So if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat, and we're going to have a conversation at the end, and I can answer those. So first, I will start off by saying that there are over 3,600 colleges and universities in the United States. That's a blessing and a curse in some ways, because there's a lot of different places where you can get a degree, but it can make it a little hard to find the school that's right for you. I am a firm believer that there is a perfect school for every student, but every school is not perfect for every student. There is a place out there for you, though. I think that to really understand which college is a good fit for you, you really have to do some reflecting, and you have to do some internal searching as a student. As a parent, you know your students best, so you can help with this discernment process. At the same time, you're definitely going to want to have questions and do research when it comes to the actual universities that you're applying to or that your kids are applying to. So first, I want to start out with some questions that I think are important to ask any different college that student is seriously considering. Typically, students will apply to around 5 schools. That's pretty normal. 5 to 10 schools is pretty normal. I think it's gone up in recent years. Sometimes I see students apply to more than that. Totally fine if you want to, but I think typical, you're good around 5, maybe a few more than that. But whatever school you are thinking of and seriously considering, there are some really vital questions that I suggest you have prepared and that you have ask of them for during this process. So first, ask every college that you're interested in if they provide tutoring and personal support services. College is going to be some of the best years of your life. Sometimes you'll hear that it's the best 4 years of your life. It can also be some of the most challenging years of your life as well. It's a big transition going from high school to college. And sometimes you need some personal and academic support. So you're going to want to find out how that's being offered at a particular university. Now, at some universities, those types of support services are part of the package. It's just all part of the package of tuition when a student goes there. But at other universities, you may have to pay for those services. So you want to find out if you do need tutoring for a particular class, do you have to pay for it? Is it $50 a session, $50 an hour? Do you pay per semester? You're also going to want to ask about personal support services. Do they have counselors available to students? That's actually something that is really common nowadays for professional counselors to be available. So you're going to want to ask about that too, if those are all kind of part of the package, or if students need insurance to see those counselors or student support specialists. Next, every student should ask if there are opportunities for aid once you're a student. Now, I know that financial aid is one of the biggest question marks that a lot of people have when they're in this process. And again, we're going to talk about that in January, but it is important to ask what aid is available, not just before the college admission process and before, during your search, but after you commit to the university and after you step foot on campus. I think that a lot of people think that your financial aid package is what it is the day you step foot on campus. That if you're getting this much, then that's all you're going to get in terms of grants and merit aid for the rest of your time in school. But that's actually not the case. A lot of universities have continuing scholarships for students who are first years, freshman students going into their sophomore years, sophomores going into juniors going into senior. So ask if they have that at the institution. You're also going to want to ask if that college or university provides access to community partnerships, internships, experiential learning. What we're really finding is that when students are applying to their first jobs when they're getting out of college, or when they're applying to med school, grad school, law school, that more and more places, to be competitive, they want students to have some experience. They want something on their resume already. So you're going to want to ask if the college provides that. Is that something that comes along with the major? Is it built into your major in some way? Are they research opportunities? Are they internships? Are they fellowships? Are they co-ops? Some schools do co-ops as well. But find out if they offer those and how they offer those, and how you might inquire about receiving some of those experiential learning experiences. Next one is one that surprises a lot of people. You're going to want to ask how many students at that particular university graduate in 4 years. There is a rather scary trend in the United States, and parents, cover your ears, you're not going to want to hear this, but the majority of college students in the United States are not graduating in 4 years. More and more, they're graduating in 6 to 8 years. And while we love our students at Xavier, we want them doing great things with their life in 4 years. And I think that that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. So whatever university you're looking at, you should ask, what is the 4-year graduation rate? What is the 6-year graduation rate? And then also, what is the 4-year graduation rate in the particular major that you're thinking about? So for example, biology is a really big major at a lot of schools. There's a lot of students in it. The 4-year graduation rate in that degree field, in that major, may be a little bit longer than students in a different major, maybe an anthropology department where they have less students. So it's just something to be aware of and to ask. Next, you're going to want to ask what the success rate or the placement rate of that university and the program that you're interested in is. Now, when we're talking about success rate and placement rate, we're talking about the percentage of students who, within 6 months of graduating, are either full-time employed, they're going to grad school, or they're doing some form of service. Some schools have really robust ROTC programs, for example. Some students do Peace Corps, that type of thing. But within 6 months, you want to know how many students have a plan, how many are going to grad school, how many are getting jobs. And you want that percentage to be close to 100%. At Xavier, it's 98%. At a lot of schools, it's right around there, but you're going to want to ask that as well and make sure that when students leave the university, that they have a plan. And next, you're going to want to ask every school if they have access to professional mentors for students. Now, a professional mentor is somebody in a student's field of study. They've been working in that field of study for maybe a few years, but it's somebody that the university can connect a student to so that they can see the day-to-day life of somebody who does what they want to do one day. So maybe they want to be a nurse and they want to be a pediatric nurse. Will the university pair that student up with somebody who does that for a living and help you get to know them? So that's something that more universities are offering. We offer it at Xavier, but I think it's a really important aspect of the college experience. Now, students are also going to want to ask themselves some questions. You know you best, and so you're going to want to really think critically about this, because there is one type of way of learning that works best for you, and you have to figure that out. I really suggest that all students during the college admissions process keep a notebook, and I always suggest a physical notebook, actually. I know a lot of people have great notes apps in their phones, but keep a notebook where you can actually write down answers to these questions and anything else that you want to take a note of during the college admissions process. But ask yourself, do you like to get to know your professors now in high school? At some universities, there's going to be professors teaching every single one of the classes that you attend. At other universities, it may be TAs teaching the courses. It may be online classes for a lot of the degree programs that you might be interested in. at that particular university. Additionally, some schools have smaller classroom settings, average of about 20 students. Others have classes of up to 300, sometimes more than that. So you might not be able to get to know your professor in the same way. So that's something to think about. If you like personal attention, you really want to think about the class size as well as how many professors are teaching every day in the classroom. Is it a professor or is it a TA? Is it an online course? Next, you're also going to want to ask if the school is, ask yourself if you would do better in a big city or something rural. Xavier is in a residential area, but we're not too far away from the downtown. But some students want to be in the middle of a city, and I totally understand that. So you think of some schools and there's skyscrapers right in the middle of campus, right? That might work for you. Maybe you want that. For other students, they like a quiet campus setting. They like an enclosed campus where there's not roads going through, but you got to figure out what you like. And some campuses are quite rural as well. And then lastly, you're going to want to ask yourself how easy it will be for you to get to and from campus during breaks. So during spring break, for example, during the winter break, during summer break, and before classes start. And this one is one that I think is a little deceiving at times because we might think of some schools as being further away, but they actually might be more accessible than schools that are closer to you because of flights and what they might be. So, for example, I used to recruit students in the state of California, and round trip flights to San Jose, California, where I used to fly in a lot, which is near San Francisco, those flights could be cheaper round trip than going other parts of the Midwest. So it was actually easier to fly there than some other places that were much closer. So when you're thinking about schools that might be right for you, it's okay to expand your search out. A school that seems further away actually might be a little bit more accessible than you first think. Now let's jump into the actual application process. Now, every school looks a little bit different with their application process, and most schools have their own application on their website. So if you go to a university's website, chances are on their front page, on their homepage, there will be a link where you can inquire about applying to school. And again, many universities, including Xavier, have their own personal application on their website. But it's also becoming more and more common that universities are participating in something called the Common App. Now, the Common App is one application that students can fill out, and over 900 different colleges and universities actually participate in the Common App. So if you fill this application out, you can have it sent to many different schools, and it makes it really easy on students, especially now in the age of technology where a lot of this is you're copying and pasting this information from one application into another. The Common App makes it really easy. Universities are typically on one of three different types of application timeline models. First is early decision, there's early action, and there's rolling admission. Rolling admission is sort of the easiest to understand in terms of when you can apply because you can really apply pretty much any time before May 1st of your senior year. Rolling admission means that you can send in applications really anytime during that timeline for most schools on rolling admission, and then that they might also release their decisions on a rolling timeline as well. For students that are interested in applying to college a little bit early and finding out early about their college decision, some schools have what's called early action. And students, if they apply early action, have to apply by a certain date in the fall. Typically, those dates are going to be early on. You're thinking maybe October 1st is a common date, for example, but students can apply by that time and they're basically guaranteed an admission decision before the new year. Early on is pretty common. Sometimes it's in the early part of the spring, but they're going to find out a little bit earlier whether they were admitted or not. Then there's early decision, which is similar, except that if you are applying early decision, you're telling that college or university that if you get in, that you will 100% be going. It is something that is binding. So keep that in mind. You don't want to apply to every school that you're applying to. You don't want to do early decision for all of them because you can really only do it for one school. So make sure that it's your dream school. Make sure it's your top choice if you're going to apply early decision. But otherwise, early action is very common at schools, as is rolling admission. Now, we're going to jump into actually what the Common App looks like when you go to start an account and when you actually fill it out. I'm going to walk you through this process because this is really how many of you are going to be applying. So when you go to commonapp.org, you're going to create a login. And the first thing it's going to ask you is what type of student you are. So if you are a current high school senior and you're looking to go to school after your senior year in a traditional 4-year type experience, right, you're a first-year student. If you are a current college student at another institution and you're applying to go somewhere else, you're a transfer student. There are also accounts for education professionals and then for parents and other adults. Parents can't apply for students though with that parent account. That's a little bit different. And the person doing this also, I will say, should be the student. It should be the student starting this process, creating the account, and really walking through this. Parents can make an account though to get information on the college application experience. Now, the general section, the first part of what you're going to fill out in the Common App is really just your basic information about who you are, your name, your address, how to contact you, email, phone number, that type of thing. There's also going to be an area where you can fill out info on the different colleges that you want to apply to, and you can even search for different institutions. But the general section is going to be pretty easy to fill out. It's going to take you just a few minutes because it is some basic demographic type information. Now, let's first go over the activities section. So the activities section is something that every student should fill out. Every now and then I get an application and there's nothing in the activities section. That's definitely not something you want to do. You want to, when you submit your application, you want to have all of the activities that you participate in. So this is extracurricular activities. So maybe you're in a club, maybe you're in the robotics club, right? That's something to put in this section. Maybe you have done theater before, put that in here. If you play a sport, this is going to go in here also. This is also a place where you can put things like an after-school job or a summer job. So if you had a job outside of school, then actually universities love seeing that. It really shows initiative for students when they have jobs. So that's something you're going to want to include. If you spend time volunteering, that's also something to put in here. A good rule of thumb is to start out the top of your activities list with the thing that you do most, and that's most important. So if you have played a sport for 4 years, you've really dedicated a lot of time to it, that might be something that you put as activity number one. If you were in, after that, maybe you were in a play for 1 semester, you know, you were in the school musical, but you only did that for 1 semester, that's going to go underneath that sport. So you kind of get the idea, but really you're going to want to make sure that you fill out this section and really include all of your activities. It's only going to help you to do that. Now, the college search tab, this is where you are going to add the universities that you would like this the Common App to be sent to. So you can search by name, and you have some filters there as well. But my suggestion is always, when you're searching by name, always make sure that the university is where you think it is. There's a lot of universities with the same name. Like I said, there's over 3,600 in the United States. There's multiple Xavier universities. We are one of 27 Jesuit institutions, for example. Among the Jesuit family in the United States, there's a Loyola Chicago, a Loyola New Orleans, a Loyola Maryland, a Loyola Marymount. So that's why you want to make sure that wherever the location is, that you have the right location, because I can't tell you how many times I get applications for Xavier University of Louisiana and vice versa. We're on the phone with them actually quite often because we get students putting the wrong school on there. So just a rule of thumb, just make sure to look at that. Now, for each university that you're applying to, besides the general part of the common application where you fill out your information, every school is going to have some different questions that they're going to ask you, and they're going to have some different parts of the application that are just specific to them. So, for example, this is where a university like Xavier or Harvard, right? We have this in the picture right here, where they're going to ask you when you want to start, which term you want to start. They're going to ask what major, what program you might want to be in. If they're a test optional university, they might explain their test optional policy and then ask if you would like your test scores to be reviewed. At some universities, this is also a place where they ask you to submit a supplemental essay. So besides the main Common App essay, which we're going to talk about in just a second, some universities may ask you to write a short essay about why you want to go to that specific university. They may ask why you want to be in that specific program. So this is really the college specific section. You're going to want to make sure that you fill out all parts for every school that you're sending this into. Now, materials that you are going to need in this process, they're pretty standard across the board for many universities. The most standard thing that all universities are going to ask for first is the high school transcript. And this is typically going to be an official high school transcript that you need to get from your high school and have it sent to the university that you are interested in applying to, the universities. For a high school transcript to be official, it typically has to be sent by the high school. So that's being sent by your uh, the guidance counselor's office, the office of the registrar at your high school. And high schools know how to get these to us. They do this all the time, but you do typically have to request. So you're going to want to go to your high school's guidance office, their college admissions office, the registrar's office, and request it to be sent to the schools you'd like it sent to. Of course, you have an application for every university. And then you have the, I'm going to skip the essay for just a second because I want to talk about the letter of recommendation. Many universities will ask for a letter of recommendation. Some may ask for one, some may ask for more than one, some may ask you for one and tell you that you can fill out a second if you'd like, or send a third, but they only need one. A good rule of thumb is to ask somebody to do your letter of recommendation who knows you best, but you're going to want it to be somebody that knows you best academically. So a coach is fine. A choir director is fine. Somebody that the director of a volunteer program that you might volunteer with, those are fine. But most universities are going to need your main one to be somebody that can speak to your academics, like a professor or a guidance counselor. Those two work for most universities. And my rule of thumb for students is to ask the person who knows you best, or one of the people who knows you best. And those are typically going to be your professors. And I say this, one, because they get to know you during the year that you are taking a class with them. So they know what you're like in the classroom. They've seen you grow, and they will typically talk about that growth as well, which is something that you want. But second, you can also ask your guidance counselor, but at many high schools, guidance counselors have a lot of recommendations that they're writing. At some high schools, they're writing hundreds in the fall. So it can be quite a load that they're taking on. So it's always good to ask a favorite teacher, maybe, but make sure to ask them early. You're going to want to ask them before the deadline, not the day before the deadline that you need to send this in, or a week before. At least a month and a half, 2 months before is a good rule of thumb. If you know that you're going to be applying to schools and they have early action, early decision deadlines on October 1st, you're going to want to start asking in August, and maybe even the end of your junior year. That way they can start this process in the summertime. ACT and SAT scores. This is something that's changing a lot in the United States. I know since the dawn of COVID, we have had a lot of schools moving to an ACT, SAT optional model. Basically, when a school asks you to send your ACT and or SAT scores, they typically want them sent from ACT or College Board, who administers SAT. But some will take these scores if your school has them. So at Xavier, for example, if they're already on your transcript and you have each section, then we'll take them from there and consider them official. If a guidance counselor gives them to us, we'll also consider those official. But some schools are ACT, SAT optional, and Xavier is as well. What that really means, and I can't speak for every university because the college admission process is different for every university, but in general, uh, test optional means that it's there to help you. It's not there to hurt you. So if you took the test and you were jumping for joy when you got your scores back, send them in. It's just one more great thing for me to review when I look at your application. But if you took those tests and you think, they really just don't reflect where I am academically, at an ACT, SAT optional school, you don't have to send those in. And that's totally fine. You're going to want to find out, though, what they're optional for. So sometimes it's for general admission. Those test scores are optional, but to be considered for competitive scholarships, like those full tuition scholarships, they may need those scores. For other universities, it's fully SAT optional, ACT, SAT optional. So you're going to want to find out the fine print when it comes to that. But don't be afraid of it. It is really there to help students. It's not there to hurt students. And lastly, the essay. So the common application has different prompts that actually they're topics that you can write your essay on. And all universities are going to see the main Common App essay. One of the biggest mistakes a student can make is writing that essay about the one school, their dream school that they want to go to. So when I get an application, I read the Common App essay and they say they want to go to Stanford. Stanford's a great school, but I'm the one reading the application. So consider that, that everybody who reads this essay, it's going to be sent to all the universities and colleges that you have selected. So the main essay will go to everybody. Now, What do you want the school to know about you? I mean, that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the college essay. And I think that this can be one of the most intimidating parts of the college application process for many students. Because it almost seems like the place where you feel like you need to convince the college admissions counselor, the college admissions team that's going to be reviewing the application, that you're right for the school. And while that may be true in some sense, it's something that is taken very seriously at universities. It's also something that I want you to think of as a way for the university to find out something about you that they wouldn't find out otherwise, to really know who you are, to see if you'd be a good fit at that university. Use it as an opportunity to tell them something that they won't see in other parts of your application. So, for example, some students might be very tempted to talk about why they want to go to that university in their main essay. Well, the thing with that is that I know you want to go to my university, you're applying to it, right? Some students are very tempted to talk about their history of academic work, but university admission counselors can see that academic work in your transcript. They can see 3.5 years of very detailed info on that. So write about something you're not going to see in that. And even sometimes the activity section, you sometimes don't want to write about the activities if you have something else you want to really display about yourself. So some tips for you. First, don't panic, because you are really the expert on you. You know you best. I think one of the biggest uh, fears that students have when they're writing this is they think to themselves, nothing big has ever happened to me. Nothing has ever happened to me, and I don't know what to write about. I don't have anything interesting to write about. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Everybody is a unique individual. You have something that you can write about that is unique to you, and it doesn't have to be some life-changing experience. If it is about a life-changing experience, then go ahead and you write about that. That's totally fine. But again, a college admissions essay is not there to wow the college admissions counselor in a way that they have never been wowed before, right? It's more so that we can get to know you, so that we can envision you on campus. So write about you. And I have a story for you, and this is, I think, it really highlights it well. For one of the best essays I ever read, this student, she wrote about Taco Bell. It was a prompt about, there's a prompt in the Common App that asks about something important to your identity, and she wrote about Taco Bell, right? Why would you write about Taco Bell? You're probably thinking to yourself. And she talked about how her and her little sister go to Taco Bell every Sunday, and it's sort of their tradition where they eat Taco Bell in their car, and they talked about their favorite thing at Taco Bell. And that it's this little tradition that they had. And the essay was funny because she was talking about Taco Bell. She was talking about fast food. It was charming because she was sharing an experience that was obviously something that makes her really happy. But more than that, she was actually sharing with me something very deep about what's important to her and her value system. She was sharing with me that the relationship with her little sister was something that was very important to her. This student was a valedictorian at her school. She was number one in her class when I was reading the essay. She ended up being a valedictorian, and she ended up coming to Xavier. But she could have written about her academics, but she didn't need to. She had that in the transcript. She could have written about one of the activities in her activity section, but she didn't. She wrote about something that was important to her, that is unique to her. So when you're writing this essay, you're really telling the admissions team at a university two things. You're telling them one thing that's tangible and one thing that's intangible. The tangible thing that you're talking about in your essay is the vehicle for us to learn about something intangible. Now, I'll tell you what I mean by that. So, with the example that we just went over, Taco Bell, she was talking about that. That was the topic, is the tangible thing she's telling us about. But the intangible thing that she's telling us is the relationship with her sister and how much she values that. So that's the way I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it as something that is unique to you, that's important to you, and that points to your value system. What is important and valuable to you in your life? That's something to talk about. Another example of a student who came to me once and said, because I do a lot of essay prep, and he said, I don't know what to write about. I have no idea. And I said, what kind of extracurriculars are you involved in? He said, I'm not involved in anything. I don't do any extracurriculars. And I said, well, there's got to be something. And he goes, well, my mom says that I play too many video games. And the first thing I said was, okay, we can work with this. Talk to me about this. What are some of your favorite video games? And he started talking to me, and you could tell he was getting really excited about it. And he really loved playing video games, and he liked playing them online with his friends. And he was telling me this story about how him and his friends would do this on a Saturday night or a Friday night, and they would have such a good time being online and laughing with each other. And I said, write about that. Write about why that's important to you, because really the tangible thing that he's telling us, the vehicle might be video games, but he's telling us something more important about himself, and that's the camaraderie he has with his friends. So think about it like that. There's always something to talk about. It doesn't have to be life changing. It just has to be about you. The essay on the Common Application has a limit of 650 words. You don't want to go over that word limit. You also don't want it to be too short. I would say that if it's if it's under 200 words, that's too short for sure. But don't go over 650 words. That's a pretty good amount for most students. 5 to 600 is where I get most of my essays. Now, here's some tips of things to think about as you write. You're going to want to write about maybe a single moment, maybe just a slice of your life. It doesn't have to be your whole life story, just something that's unique to you. Like I said, the relationship with her sister in that one essay, or why the student likes to play video games with his friends. Use details. We love imagery, right? We're trying to envision the student on a college campus, on our college campus. So use imagery, talk about the emotions, talk about the feelings, do some discernment about why whatever you're telling us about, whatever the experience is, why it's important to you, and really dive into those emotions and try and put them on paper. Focus things on one aspect. You don't want a story to range a multi-year story that has many different plot lines. I mean, make it short and concise in terms of what you're telling us about. You want a focal point for that. Answer the question for sure. I can't tell you how many essays I get for students that are writing about something that was a challenge to them or something that they may have failed at one point, and then at the end of the essay, they win the national spelling bee type thing. I see what you're doing there, so you're going to want to answer the prompt the way that it's given, and think about what's right for you in that sense. You're also going to want to proofread. This is the age of Google, and there's some great functionality in Microsoft Word and whatnot, but you want to proofread this. There shouldn't be any major grammar mistakes because it's so easy to check for grammar mistakes nowadays. If you are in doubt, have a parent read it, have a English professor read it, have your guidance counselor read it. There really shouldn't be any grammar mistakes in this essay. And don't use a thesaurus to sound not like you. I mean, a lot of times we might be drawn to use really interesting words and really interesting imagery, but make it still you. This is conversational in many ways. This is not academic writing. This is conversational writing. Now, to brainstorm, if you're having trouble thinking about what you would like to write about, here are some prompts. What makes you nostalgic? What's it like being you right now? What are some of the things that you love about life? What are your passions? What's the best gift you've ever been given? What's the best thing that's ever happened to you? Is there a favorite vacation that you've taken? Talk to me about your best friend. Talk to me about what sparks joy for you. There's a lot of different things you can talk about, like I said earlier, but these are some great questions to think about, and that can really start the brainstorming process. But one of the best things you can do, again, I said it earlier, but have a physical notebook where you can write down and jot down your thoughts. Start this process of brainstorming in the summer before your senior year if you can, because if you have that, you'll at the most random times you'll think of some of the most brilliant things, just the perfect line that you think, oh, that's going to go well at the end of my essay, and it just popped into your head. Write it down. If you had a good dream about something and you think it could maybe you were thinking about a memory or something in your dream, I'm not sure, but maybe that's something that you're going to want to write down and make sure that you remember every bit of it. These are things to really make sure you get on paper so that they can culminate to an essay. Now, what can you do right now? So if you are a high school freshman, sophomore, or junior, this is really the time to be starting to think about things that you might want to study, starting to think about things that you're going to want to include on your application. If you are the end of your junior year, if this is the summer before your senior year or the fall of your senior year, you're going to want to be doing a few things. First, you're going to want to make a list of those recommenders. Who are you going to ask to write your letter of recommendation? And again, you're going to want to request that from them at least a month and a half in advance. I like to say 2 months in advance because they might have a lot of essays that they're doing, a lot of recommendations they're doing. Make that list of activities, make sure it's all written out so that you don't forget anything when you go to actually fill out the application. And then start doing some research on schools. Do some research on different schools that you think might be good for you. Ask parents about schools. Ask your friends about schools that they've heard about. Ask your guidance counselor. Do some searching online. There's some great search engines out there. U.S. News and World Report. They have great lists also. Don't stick to just lists though. Really find universities that you think have programs that fit you in the sense of your needs. Like I said earlier, do you want a big school? Do you want a smaller school? Do you want a rural school? Do you want a more residential school? But also the summer is the time to also start brainstorming these essays. And it is a good rule of thumb to have your essay at least in outline form by the end of your summer of your senior year, summer before your senior, excuse me. If not the full essay draft, your first draft of it already done. And it's not a bad idea to work on two essays. I always tell students, work on two, see where they go. A lot of times you're surprised with which one you end up choosing because different things, different moments of brilliance come at different times, right? All right. Now, how do you find the schools that are right for you? How do you pick the schools? Well, one of the things that you can do is find a school that is a good academic fit for you in terms of where you are with your GPA, with your ACT, SAT scores. Um, when we're thinking about schools that we're going to pick, we're going to think about schools in three different categories. First, we're going to think of our reach schools, our stretch schools. Those are schools that might be a little tougher to get into, schools where, in terms of academically, a lot of students might be, a little bit higher in GPA. Target schools are schools where a lot of the students who go to that school are right where you are academically. That's a target school for you. It's one that you think you have a pretty sure bet that you are pretty similar to other students in terms of academics. So you have a pretty good idea that you might get into that school. And then lastly, you're going to want to think of foundational schools. We used to call these safe schools. I don't like that term. Foundational schools, I think, is a better option. These are schools that you know that you'll most likely get into these schools and where you might be academically just really set if you go to that school because you're very well prepared. And when you're thinking about where you fit into these categories, I want you to look at the middle 50%. So most universities will publish their middle 50% of last year's incoming first year freshman class on their website. And this middle 50% is basically where students were academically, the majority of their incoming students. This means that 25% of students were above this range and 25% of their incoming class were below this range. So the current range that you're seeing here is Xavier University's range. The middle 50% had between a 22 and a 28 on the ACT, an 1110 to a 1310 on the SAT, and about a 3.4 to a 4.0. If you fit squarely in the middle of this is probably going to be a target school for you. You can think of Xavier as a target school for you. If you are in the top 25% of a school's range, where you are above this middle 50%, then that might be a foundational school for you. But if you're in the bottom 25%, or the majority of students all in that middle 50% all have over a 4.0, that might be a reach school. That might be one of those stretch schools. So think about it like that. But most universities will publish their middle 50%. This is a great way to see where you fall academically. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but I do suggest that you apply to about 5 schools, 6 schools. 2 in each of these categories is a really good choice for you. Is a really good option for you. Now, this is a snapshot of the college admissions timeline. It's a general snapshot because it's different for every university, but in general, this is what it's going to look like. Feel free to snap a picture of this. Again, this session is being recorded, but the beginning of this process in terms of the timeline is going to start on August 1st. That's when many universities release their application for students to start applying, either their personal application on their website or the common application. And the common application opens on August 1st of every year. In the fall and in the summertime, but also the fall, you're going to want to be gathering those admission materials. You're going to want to request your transcripts and know how to request your transcripts from your guidance office. You're going to want to be working on that essay. Your letters of recommendation, request those, know whether you're going to send those test scores in, and then know how the university wants to receive those test scores. October 1st is when the FAFSA opens. Now, the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is how the government, the Department of Education, determines, based on household income, your family's household income, whether you might be eligible for loans from the government. Everybody's eligible for loans from the government in the amount of $5,500. If you apply to the FAFSA, you will be approved for that. we can go into more detail on that in the next session, but that's one thing. Work study, which is a job on campus, you can put those funds towards your tuition and room and board if you plan to live on campus. It also shows your eligibility for grants from the government. That's money you don't have to pay back. We love grants. You probably have heard of the Pell Grant before. It would show your eligibility for that if you fill it out. That opens up October 1st. Many universities want that before a certain date. So at Xavier, we suggest that all students get that in by December 1st. That's our priority deadline. Some universities want it in before maybe February 1st, but find out. And then also find out if you would like to be considered for those big scholarships, the competitive scholarships. Some universities might also require that you fill that out. I can't recommend it enough. I know that for a lot of families, they think, well, we might not be approved for anything, so we're not going to fill it out. Or if the university knows how much the family makes, then it might hurt me some way. It won't. It's really there to help you. It is not there to hurt you. And it's supposed to be used for all the right reasons, and most universities do. If a university uses it for the wrong reasons, you don't want to go to that university. So fill out the FAFSA. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself. Mid-October is when many admission decisions start rolling out for schools. So keep that in mind. Also, some universities have 1 date or 2 dates where they roll out all of their decisions. For bigger schools, like the Ivy League schools where they get a lot of applications, or the University of California school system, they release all of their decisions in the spring. The majority of them are going to be released then. Other schools might roll them out. But in general, many will start releasing in mid-October. You're also going to want to use this time to apply to competitive scholarships. Those are those big ones. Like I said, sometimes you need a separate application when you apply to those at that university, and then apply to private scholarships as well. Students are not applying to private scholarships the way that they used to. We used to go to Barnes and Noble, or a bookstore or the library, and get a big book, and it had a list of all of these scholarships we would send them out to. It's so much easier now when you can use the internet to search, but apply to those private scholarships. Every little bit helps. And then the spring, and even in the fall, but also in the spring, attend in-person admitted student events, attend open houses, and visit campuses, go on a tour. No student should consider going to a school unless they've gone on at least a tour, if not sat in a classroom and talked to a professor. That is one of the worst things you can do, is commit to a university without having visited and seen if it's really right for you, because that's really how you're going to know. And then May 1st is the national deadline to commit to universities all across the United States. Use that time. Reach out to college admissions representatives like myself. I think I can speak for every admissions counselor in my office that the best part of my job is getting to know students and their families. So we know you have questions, and that this is this can be a scary time. It's an exciting time, but it can be scary as well. But use the time before May 1st to ask those questions to make sure that you're making the decision that is right for you. My last point of advice for students is that you're going to want to get input from other people. You're going to want to ask your high school guidance counselor, your college advising office at your high school, about schools that might be right for you. They're going to know a lot of them, many that you probably have never heard of. So ask them. Ask your friends. Talk to them about where they're applying and why they're applying there. Talk to your family as well. I mean, your family knows you best. I always say parents do know you best. Talk to a college admissions counselor like myself. But at the end of the day, you're growing into your adulthood, right? You are becoming an adult, and you know you best. This is a decision that you need to make for yourself. Of course, you want to consult family and whatnot, but in terms of what works for you, how big the school is, what type of support you need, that's going to be something you're going to want to reflect on and really do some discernment on. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of great places where you can find information about schools, but at the end of the day, find what works right for you. My suggestion to all students listening and to parents is that students need to be at the helm of this process. They need to be the one applying to schools through the Common App. They need to be the ones applying to those scholarships. They need to be the ones calling college admissions offices. I would say that about 80% of the time when I'm talking to people outside of the university, when I'm talking to families, I'm talking to a parent, not a student. And that's fine. I love talking to parents, but I love seeing students really taking the wheel and being in the driver's seat with this. Parents, I want you right next to them, giving them questions to ask and guiding them and supporting them along. That's a really important part of the process, but I love seeing students doing this. There's a lot of parents out there that will fill out the application for their student, and we know when we see it, so keep that in mind. But this is really a partnership between students and their parents and vice versa. But ask your questions. to college admissions counselors, and really right now is time where you can ask questions of me, and I can hopefully answer those for you.
Thank you so much, Mike, for taking us through that awesome presentation. There was a lot of great information packed in, and I know we have quite a few questions, so we'll go ahead and get started. The first one is, who should be writing my letters of recommendation?
Great question. I talked about this, I touched on this just a bit, but a guidance counselor or a professor, you're a pretty good bet that either one of those is typically fine for most universities. Many will request just one, and then you could submit a supplemental if you'd like, but the main one needs to be either a guidance counselor or a professor, and it needs to speak to your academics in some way.
The next question is there anything I should include with my application outside of what's required?
Really, the answer is no. I mean, the universities will let you know everything that they need. It doesn't hurt to submit a resume if you'd like to submit a resume. If some students like that, some high schools prepare students to send that out and prefer that their students send that with their applications. But no, a university will tell you what they need, and if you have each of those items, then you should be good.
This question's a really good one. Does the common application cost money, and is there a charge for every application?
That is a great question, and I didn't touch on this. I meant to, so thank you for asking. So the common application is free. There's no charge to create an account and to begin the process of sending it to schools. Different schools, though, may have fees. So when you add Xavier to that, for example, we don't have a fee, and we have no supplemental essay you have to fill out, anything like that. We make it really as easy as possible. Some universities may require that you pay a fee to apply. Typically, those fees are, $25 to $75, $80, somewhere in that range. More and more schools are going fee-free, though. You don't need fees for them, but some schools do require it. But it's not the Common App. It's school specific if they do.
And we have some high school juniors on today. They ask, when should I start applying as a high school junior?
August 1st is when you can start that process. It's when the common application opens. You, of course, are welcome to, and I encourage students to do research and to start gathering those materials and working on brainstorming that essay. But the actual admissions process, when you start applying, is not going to happen until right before you start school of your senior year, typically around August 1st, if not September 1st, universities will have their applications open.
This next question is asking if you can review the early application deadline that you had mentioned earlier in the presentation.
Sure, yeah. So again, different universities, and this is one of the things that makes it a little tough. Different universities have different timelines, and they have their admission timeline on a certain, they have different models. So again, there's early action, there's early decision, and there's rolling admission. Rolling admission means that there's no deadline. So there might be a priority deadline, maybe if you want to be considered for a certain program or for competitive scholarships, for example, or for honors programs. But it means that if you applied in October, you're fine. If you applied in December, you're fine. A lot of times, if you apply in the spring, you're fine as well. Some universities offer, in addition to they'll offer early action or early decision. So if they offer early action or early decision, they typically have a regular admission deadline as well, or they have a rolling admission besides that. But they will give the option of early action or early decision. Early action means that you can apply as an early action student, and that means that you will hear back a little bit earlier, and that's a great benefit. Early decision, if you apply early decision, that means that you are not just applying early, but that you're telling that university, if I get into your school, I will commit there. I'm planning on going there. So it is binding. You will end up going to that school. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to apply to all 5 or 6 of your schools or 10 of your schools on early decision, because you can really only do that for one of them if you end up getting it. So let it be your dream school if you do it.
This next question is asking for advice. They say they're in the middle of their senior year now. Is it too late to start applying?
Absolutely not. No, like I said, a lot of universities have regular admission timelines. They have rolling admission. I will fully review an application if I get it the day before May 1st. That student is still eligible to be reviewed in my book at Xavier and at many other universities. So one of the best things you can do is get a spreadsheet, and in the spreadsheet on the left column, put a list of all the universities you're interested in applying to. On the top row, have the things that you want to make a note of. Are they early action or early decision or rolling admission? Have another little cell box B for what date do you have to have everything in by. Another one B for materials. Write down which materials you need at that university. That's going to really help you keep it all, keep track of it all, because there is a lot. But no, you can absolutely still apply, and I would encourage you to apply to universities now. And as we go into the spring, it doesn't hurt. And many universities have waived their fees as well, so it makes it easier because they're on the Common App.
This next question is for the parents. They're asking for advice on if their student isn't interested off the bat in getting ahead on these items. How would you say to get them engaged or start acting on these things early?
I think that one of the things that students, because I get it, students are really, really busy. Far busier than I was for sure when I was in school. I feel like students do a lot of extracurriculars and whatnot. So I get it. One of the things that I think gets students really excited about the process is a college visit. So schedule a college visit with them, take them on a tour. Chances are, if they haven't been on a college tour before, they're going to get pretty excited, and they're going to be excited about the process, and they're going to want to do this more often. Because once they step foot on a campus, once they see a college classroom, once they see everything that's going on, it gets more exciting. So if you're having trouble, kind of gently pushing the student in the right direction, sometimes getting them on campus can be the first step.
This next question is circling back to ACT scores. Do ACT scores matter as much as they used to? Is there a minimum requirement to get in, or is that mainly used for scholarships?
That's such a tough question, because it really is university by university. At some universities, they really, that's one of the main points of the admission process, and they weight it very heavily. At other schools, not as much. It just really depends on the university and how they're using it, especially if they're using it for something like to review for competitive scholarships or for honors programs. For us at Xavier, really, we went test optional about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and our idea, what we see is that students have we have 3 to 3.5 years of academic info on your transcripts. We have an essay to learn a little bit about you and look at your writing ability. We have a letter of recommendation. That is more than enough for us to really know whether you'd be successful at Xavier and to know if you're right for your program. A test score is just one score, and I think that we get really families get really anxious and students get really anxious about it, and rightfully so. I get it. But no student's a number in my book or in our book here in the college admissions. So it is something we factor in. If you send those scores in, we will certainly review them, but we also know that you are not a test score. So keep that in mind. And more universities see it that way than you might think.
Back to your comment on having a junior attend a college tour. How do you get a junior on a college tour? Who do you contact? Do you have further information on that?
Good question. Yeah, so you're going to want to register for a tour, especially now because of COVID. Many universities need you to register before you come to campus. They might have certain protocols. So go to a university's website, and typically on their main page, they'll have a little button a little link where you can click where it says visit. You'll also see one for apply for sure, but look for the visit button, the visit link. If you can't find it, there's always going to be a search box at the top. Search visit. I guarantee it's probably going to be the first link that pops up, if not the second one, and it will give you information on how you can register for a visit and then what type of visit. If you'd like to go on an open house, if you would like to register for a classroom visit or sit down and talk with a professor, if you'd like to go to a reception that might be in your neck of the woods. Some universities do that as well. So go to the visit page. That's where you can do that.
This next question is asking for advice on taking a leap year. Do colleges know about that time off? Is it negatively perceived?
Yeah, so we can typically deduce that you took a leap year. If we get your transcript and you were a graduate the year prior, we'll be able to see it from that. No, it's not a bad thing. I mean, if students want to take a year off, I certainly don't see it as a bad thing. I don't see it necessarily as bad or good. It's just a different option that a student took, and I don't look negatively on it at all. Again, I can't speak for every admissions office, but every student has their own path. It doesn't hurt to take a year off if a student needs that, especially if it's something that they really need. If they need to take that year, sometimes that's best for them. But again, that's something that the student really needs to reflect on. I don't think that it will necessarily hurt them, though, in the college admissions process.
I know we're coming up on the 8 o'clock hour. We have a couple moments left. If you have any questions, go ahead and put that in your questions feature. We'll ask a couple more, and then if we don't get to your question, I'll shoot them over to Mike after tonight's webinar to get those questions answered for you. The next one is, what is a competitive scholarship versus a merit scholarship or an academic scholarship?
Great question. So when we're talking about scholarships, a lot of universities provide academic scholarships, and I'll say academic / merit scholarships because a lot of times those are used interchangeably. A merit scholarship or an academic scholarship is something that a student is receiving based on their academics, based on their merit, how they performed academically in school. Many universities will provide those scholarships to students, and they will find out early on in the admissions process, like when they're admitted, what their merit scholarship is. At Xavier, every single student receives a merit award. Those range from about $16,000 to $25,000 per year. Many times these awards are renewable awards. You get it 1 year, you might get it the second year, third year, fourth year, but you're going to want to check on that. And we notify students in their actual acceptance letter. And that is actually becoming a pretty standard practice, especially at private universities. Public institutions might not have as high of merit awards because their tuition is subsidized by the state, by the government, or they might not have any depending on the institution. So it's different from school to school. A competitive scholarship are going to be those ones that don't go to everybody. They're going to be the big ones, the full tuition scholarship, maybe a performing arts scholarship. That's considered a competitive scholarship. A departmental scholarship, so maybe the nursing program at that particular school has scholarships for students who are just interested in nursing. That's a competitive scholarship. Those are typically not, those are not going to go to every student. That's why we call them competitive, and they are institutional as well. That's something that's facilitated through the institution. Typically, when we're talking about private scholarships, the term competitive isn't used as much. And then when we're talking about financial aid is need-based. So usually when you hear financial aid package, it's including need-based and merit aid. But when you're talking about financial aid in general, it's typically going to be need-based, based on household income.
Great, thank you so much. That's going to conclude our Q&A session for tonight. Again, we wanted to thank you all so much for joining the Xavier Leadership Center, Xavier University, and General Electric Credit Union. Again, thank you for taking time to join us and learn with us this evening. And we hope you've learned valuable information you can apply when beginning to apply to colleges. We will see you all on January 5th for our next session, Financial Aid and Scholarships. And with that, thank you all so much again for joining and have a great rest of your evening.